everyone, welcome back to another video. It's been way too long since I made a video and I missed y'all so much, but I am back with a 30-day film challenge. For every single day in November, I watched a movie every day. Some of these movies you voted for in my Instagram polls, so I'm very excited to finally share with y'all my thoughts and my ramblings on every single one of them. I watched a movie every single day in November. I don't know why I had the time to do this, and I don't know why I didn't give up after 7 days, but I did it anyways. I regret it, but I also don't regret it, and I honestly want to do another film challenge for some reason, but it was like, great, it was an experience. I keep wanting to say I'm never gonna do this again, but I know I'm gonna do it again. Maybe not every single day, but maybe like a themed challenge. Like I'll watch the upcoming Oscar nominations, or I'll ask y'all for your favorite movies and have a random selection of movies to watch. This was actually kind of fun. I hated myself and I hated my life during it, but you know what? I do it again! I'm so excited for y'all to watch this video and my thirst and my cringe thirst. Enjoy! Okay, so today is day 7 of my movie challenge. But before I get to the movies, let me just say, 2 days into this challenge, I was already tired of it. But now I'm 7 days in, and like, I'm starting to feel it now, y'all. Unsurprisingly, watching a movie every day is not good for my health. But I'm gonna keep doing it because I want to do this challenge. Let's talk about the 7 movies I've watched so far. So day 1 was An American Werewolf in London. I didn't know that this was a horror comedy, so like I was watching the movie and laughing because I was like, is this supposed to be cringy? There's some things in this movie that are like so absurd. There's some outdated stuff like, you know, racism and some narrative tropes that are very outdated, but the humor kind of still stands. But I still wouldn't recommend it to people, only if you are really interested in watching this movie. This is one of the funniest straight cut to credit scenes I have ever watched in a movie. It's like Shazam! An American Werewolf in Paris, in London. The second movie I watched was The Guilty, which is a Danish movie. I originally put this movie on my watch list because Jake Gyllenhaal recently did an American remake of this film, and it looked very much like Copaganda, and when it came out and there were reviews coming in, everyone said it was Copaganda and you should just watch the original movie. And the main character is a police officer who has been temporarily demoted to a dispatcher, basically someone who answers 911 phone calls. Not 911, that's the US emergency number. I don't know what it is over in Denmark, but essentially he's been demoted for reasons that you'll find out, but I'm sure you can kind of figure out why based on what I'm saying about this movie. And he's answering a phone call from a woman who's been kidnapped, and the call got disconnected, and so he's kind of like trying to help this woman out of the situation. So there's some things that I do want to say about this movie. My initial reaction after finishing it was I could see why people really enjoyed this movie and why it's like critically acclaimed. But at this point, I've seen so many movies that I kind of predicted what they were going to do with the narrative, and so like none of the stuff that happened in the story came as a shock to me. And then a couple days later, I, sat with the movie more, and I came to appreciate the movie's intention a lot more after thinking about it. The best way I could describe The Guilty is that it's like a anti-cop movie, in the sense that the intention of this movie is to criticize cop culture and criticize how cops have this savior complex. And it criticizes this rhetoric that chalks up police brutality to like, oh, the cop has a mental illness, so that's why they did what they did. It acknowledges that cops 100% know what they're doing, and that mental illness has nothing to do with police brutality. All while doing that, they don't idolize the main character who is a cop. Could it be better? Maybe, yes. But I see what they were trying to do, and I think that they achieved it. Day 3 was Trick or Treat. I stumbled upon this movie while in Letterboxd, of course. It's not a movie that I'm familiar with. It is 4 stories within one movie, but they're kind of like all woven together because they're all in the same little town. And all this stuff happens on the night of Halloween. Upon finishing it, I was very shocked that this movie isn't a more popularized horror movie, particularly a popular Halloween classic movie. Not only does it take place on Halloween, but it has like this monster character, a little icon who could be seen with like Chucky and Michael Myers when I think of Halloween. And speaking of, Sam is adorable. Oh my god, I'm gonna have like a meltdown thinking about Sam. He's so tiny, I can fit him in my hands. He's so tiny and precious. Oh my god. His head barely reaches like the doorknob. Yeah, but oh my god, that movie is genuinely very fun. Like, yeah, is it kind of like cliche and silly? Yes, of course it has those moments, but it's also just really enjoyable. The day after that, day 4, I watched The Haunting. No, I don't even want to talk about it. I think that I have refined my palette for old horror movies a little too much. Day 5, I watched No Country for Old Men. At this point during the challenge, I was so fucking exhausted. I could barely focus and pay attention on this movie, but it was a very good movie. But you know, I did space out a lot, so I feel like I can't really give a proper opinion on it, but the first hour of that movie was really fucking good. Like, it was a solid 4 stars for me. And then as soon as I started getting to the second hour, my brain just like checked out. I was tired. I wanted to go to bed already. When I think about the plot overall and what they were trying to do with the movie, I'm like, yes, this is a very good movie. But the experience of watching it was kind of ruined by the fact that I was kind of falling asleep. Yesterday, day 6, I watched The Matrix. This is a movie that I watched in middle school. I don't know what year that would be, but I watched it in middle school. Didn't really feel anything for it. I put it back on my watch list and was like, I'm gonna watch it again, give it another shot. Maybe I'll like it this time around. And I did. I really, really loved it. I don't think I'm gonna be like super passionate about it. Like, honestly, Sam from Trick or Treat, I am much more passionate about that than I am for The Matrix. But like, the aesthetic and the way it's shot and the fight scenes are so fucking good. It's just that my heart is not as emotionally invested in it as I thought I would be. I'm really hoping that my emotional attachment to the series will grow the more that I watch the movies. And I also have to, you know, watch the other movies in the franchise. And then also very excited for the 4th movie coming out in December. I know I'm very critical of the fact that people keep rebooting franchises because it's honestly, the motivations for all of that shit is capitalism. But one of the Wachowski sisters? I'm sorry, I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but one of them was talking about how during COVID they experienced the death of a family member, I believe, and how coming back to these characters who had meant so much to her, writing a story about them was very cathartic for them during their process of grief. And so that really piqued my interest, which is why I think it might be more than just rebooting the franchise. I really hope that it's more than just for money, but the motivations for coming back to the franchise, that resonates with me. I'm looking forward to it. Y'all, I need to get my hands on some leather pants. Like, I know it's gonna be uncomfortable as shit, but watching that movie, I was inspired. I need it. And then today, day 7, I watched Twilight. I'm afraid of saying this, but I do think Twilight is a good movie. And that opinion doesn't stem from nostalgia. I've only seen each movie once. Twilight is the only movie I've seen 3 times. The first time I watched these movies was in 2015, so not at all during the hype. I didn't grow up on Twilight. So this opinion isn't, you know, me thinking back to the old days or whatever. It's genuinely a good movie. That being said, there's obviously a lot of problems, cultural appropriation. The romance has a lot of creepy, predatory behavior, but the story is actually very good. Like, the best part of Twilight isn't the romance, for me. If you all want to know a secret, we're gonna be reviewing this movie in the next Labyrinth of Bizarre episode, so I will have a more well thought out, concise review of the movie. But right now, my brain is kind of like... Today is day 8 of the film challenge. I just finished Come True, a low-budget Canadian film released in 2020. I'm so mad! The first 2/3 of this movie is so amazing. It's so awesome. I would have rated it at that point 4 out of 5 stars. And then the last third of the movie happened and it suddenly became a 2-star movie. It was so drastically terrible. Come True is about a teenage runaway who has trouble sleeping and has nightmares, and she joins a sleep study. Based off of what I just said, you can probably imagine a very stereotypical horror movie about nightmares and whatnot, but it takes a lot more dramatized and haunting approach. The tone and the atmosphere, it's like so well done. The color grading is like blue and green tones, and then like a really haunting synth soundtrack. It reminds me so much of another horror movie that's a favorite of mine called It Follows. It's so good at portraying the horror that it wants to portray. It's so unnerving, makes you feel uneasy. I love the visuals. The visual aesthetic is so fucking good. Oh my god. Like, genuinely wanted to rate this a 4 stars, and I can definitely even see people giving it 5 stars if they were able to pull it off, but I guess they just didn't know how to bring about the climax of the film or how to conclude it, which is why it ends the way that it does. Oh, I'm so upset that I rewatched Kingsman: The Secret Service, which is the first movie in the Kingsman series. Kingsman: The Secret Service is about this super secret spy organization that recruits this street kid who then has to go through this like intensive spy training program. And in the background, there's like this like terrible thing going on, like world domination type of shit. Not world domination, it's more of a let's solve climate change in a very terrible way. This movie sounds basic, but it goes so hard. I love this movie, and it was just as amazing as I remembered it being. Fun fact, I actually got kicked out of the theater trying to watch this movie because I was still a minor at the time. Kingsman: The Secret Service is such a creatively stylized, well-made movie. The style of the movie, like the editing and just like the tone and the humor, I don't know how to explain it, but I can compare it to other directors that it reminds me of. It reminds me of Edgar Wright, who directed Shaun of the Dead, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Baby Driver, and it also reminds me of Guy Ritchie, who made The Man from U.N.C.L.E. So if you're familiar with any of those movies, that like really unique, quick editing style, it's a lot like that. Spy movies are typically very, very serious and borderline boring, like James Bond, and you can also see a lot of James Bond influence in this movie, which I now know because I've watched the James Bond movies. On the other side of the spectrum of this genre, people try to take spy movies and make it like quirky, and they try too hard to make it different and cool and not like the other spy movies, like the Charlie's Angels reboot movie, which was very bad. Kingsman: The Secret Service finds a way to get like both of that and perfectly balance them together, along with this very hyperactive editing style, British humor, and over the top absurdity, like weirdness that you really don't think should be pulled off in a film like this, and yet it works really well. Matrix Reloaded is very much a sequel and a build-up for the conclusion of the trilogy. I think this is a hit or miss movie, and unfortunately, it is a miss for me. The movie by itself barely stands on its own. I think the plot is so messy and that they decided to focus on all the wrong things. The action is shockingly terrible in this film. It's like they took all the really good parts of the first film and was like, hey, let's just do it again and do it excessively in our sequel, and that means we'll make a hit. That's not how that works. Rock'n'Rolla. It's a Guy Ritchie movie. Basically, a Russian mobster sets up this really huge scam that generates millions of pounds, British pounds. Pounds is a currency in multiple countries, I think. I don't know. Anyway, it generates like millions of pounds, and a bunch of criminals in the area are trying to steal that money away. Guy Ritchie is the director, and he made one of my favorite films, The Man from U.N.C.L.E. And so because of that, I have literally started watching all of his movies, and this is one of them, and unfortunately, I don't like it. It's funny as fuck though, do not get me wrong. I just don't think the plot is very good. It's so funny. Like, there are some scenes in Rock'n'Rolla that I will never forget. It will live in my head for the rest of my life. Like, one in particular. So Mark Strong, he plays like the right-hand man to this rich guy, and he gets like these really random weird lines. Like at one point he says, "Dead-faced, slow down, Tinkerbell," and it's like the funniest thing ever. I don't understand that scene.
Well, there's not much you can't do, is there?
Slow down, Tinkerbell. You'll never sing the same if your teeth ain't chipmunk.
Gerard Butler and Thandie Newton have this really terrible dance together. I mean, I don't know, Thandie Newton, it's like bad dancing, but she pulls it off really well. Gerard Butler, on the other hand, terrible dancing. And I think it's intentional, but it could also not be intentional. Maybe Gerard Butler is a really bad dancer. I don't know. But it's like, it's so bad. Like the camera like zooms in on his feet when he's dancing. And like his movement is really bad, so it's like the shot is supposed to be like, ooh, impressive footwork, but it's not impressive, it's terrible. The last funny thing I will say to pitch this movie to you, Tom Hardy plays a gay man. Like, how many gay men have you played, Tom Hardy? A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night is a black and white film set in a small Iranian ghost town with a lonely vampire. This is a rape revenge movie, and unlike some rape revenge movies like Promising Young Woman, this actually does the rape revenge trope right and respects victims of sexual assault. This movie is beautiful, and I only like black and white films if they really capitalize on like beautiful shadows and contrast, because like if you're making a black and white film and you're not doing that, then what's the fucking point? I love the atmosphere in this movie. It's not quite like eerie and haunting, but it's more of like that calm emptiness you feel during nighttime. Like if you're sitting in your backyard, or I was gonna say walking at night, but walking at night is terrifying. Walking at night in a safe area. And the main character's introduction is so good. Like first we see like appearances of her in the background, but when she gets her first proper introduction to the audience, it's so good the way they do it. Adventureland is a movie about a college graduate who works at a theme park to save up money for grad school. I watched this movie because I needed a movie that I didn't really have to pay attention to when I watched it, so I watched this movie. It's not great, and that's all I'm gonna say about it. Oh my god, okay, so Spencer I watched yesterday. I I fell in love with this movie, y'all. So Spencer is about Princess Diana spending the Christmas holiday with the royal family. I watched this yesterday in theaters and was just so shocked and overwhelmed by how much I loved it. I loved it so much that I'm actually going to write a proper review for it, but I haven't started that process yet to like make concise thoughts, so y'all are just gonna get my ramblings. I don't know much about Princess Diana other than the fact that the media treated her really terribly. She was cheated on by the prince, and that she died in a car crash that many believe was an assassination by the royal family. It isn't necessarily a traditional biopic, which is what I was expecting. It's an exploration of the mental state of someone who was experiencing extreme emotional isolation. And I love the narrative tools they use to express this. Not only are there these heavily loaded, carefully worded conversations with a variety of characters, but it also uses these horror elements that pairs really well with the intense emotions that Diana is expressing throughout the whole movie. Her agony and torture and isolation is just so well written and well acted by Kristen Stewart, whose performance I was highly skeptical of. But in all honesty, Kristen Stewart, her performance is the best thing of this movie. She really pulled it off, which is a shock to me, because I was watching the first few minutes of that movie really biased against her. Usually when it comes to biopics, you know, it's very hard to replicate that, like the person's likeness, their behaviors, but I think she did a fucking phenomenal job because holy shit. The Harder They Fall is a film I watched today, and it is a film about black cowboys, and it has such a fucking stacked ensemble cast with just great actors. Oof. Regina King, so good. So this guy who has a vendetta against this other guy, he takes his gang to take revenge upon this guy who has just been released from prison. The first 48 minutes was actually really fucking good. And yes, I did look at the timestamp because I wanted to know exactly how much I enjoyed this movie. It was so well paced and intriguing. Like, I was trying to do some stuff quickly on my digital planner and I could not take my eyes off my screen for 1 second. The train robbery scene has some of the best visual decisions in this movie. It is my favorite part in the film. The movie loses its way when it's forced to draw out its story to make up for the unnecessary 2-hour runtime. With a plot as simple as this, it doesn't need 2 hours, and forcing it to have that runtime did so much harm to the film overall. For the conclusion of the story, they use this really fucking stupid writing trope that I absolutely hate. I think it's a cheap cop-out, and when you're just really fucking tired because the story is super drawn out, that narrative trope just does not satisfy you the way it's supposed to. So yeah, today was day 15, halfway through this challenge, and it sucks because, like, I don't have a moment to catch my breath and savor the movies I'm watching. Like, I love watching all these movies, but I'm so excited for this challenge to be over because I'm just so tired mentally. Hey y'all, today is November 21st. I watched some movies. One of them, very good. The rest were like, honestly, I am still riding that Spencer high right now. Like, I'm just so enamored by that movie that my brain is kind of just like, wow, these movies suck. But there was one movie that was like also a 5-star movie. It was like on par with Spencer, and that is Saw. So 2 men regain consciousness and they're like chained up on either ends of a really dirty, disgusting, abandoned bathroom. They realize that they've been trapped by a serial killer named Jigsaw and that they have to solve his puzzles to live. Saw is actually so very good. Like, I was not expecting a good movie just because of the reputation that the Saw films have and the trailers I've seen for like the past, I don't know, 10 years or whatever. It just seems very dumb and forgettable. So I was very shocked to find that the first Saw movie is so good. So going back to the reputation that the Saw franchise has, the franchise, specifically the first movie, inspired a whole era of torture porn in horror films. And what's interesting is that Saw itself doesn't have any of that. All of the torture in this film is intentional and it serves a purpose in building the world and the story, building up the serial killer Jigsaw, who, by the way, great mask. Saw is not only a very good movie plot-wise, it's also really funny. And one of my favorite lines in this film is, "This is the most fun I've had without lubricant," which is like, what? Is great comedy. Great. James Wan, like I've said, very good. Speaking of James Wan, so James Wan directed this film, right? And Leigh Whannell wrote it. And I know that James Wan and Leigh Whannell are friends. They're like best friends. They always work together. But it completely slipped my mind that Leigh Whannell's also an actor, which, like, I visited Leigh's IMDb page so many times. I have no idea why I didn't realize that, like, he has acted in so many films. Like, Leigh Whannell has directed 3 movies, and yet to me what he is known for is directing movies, but like, he's acted in like 40 films. I don't know why my brain just chose to ignore he's acted more than he's directed. Anyway, my point is, this is the first time that I have seen Leigh Whannell in a movie and realized that that was him. Because I have seen him in movies before, but like younger Leigh Whannell and older Leigh Whannell look so different. So like, when I looked up IMDb after watching this movie and realized that that was him, I was kind of just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Because young Leigh Whannell can kind of fucking get it. He's actually very attractive. Whoa, what? This is very awkward realization for me, to realize that a director that I pay attention to and respect was really attractive back in the day. I don't know. I was very uncomfortable with this revelation. When he smokes a cigarette at this one scene, I was just like, oh, I felt something inside me. I was like, oh. It was partly like, ooh, I wish I could be like you, but it was also partly like, you are very attractive. And there's a joke in the horror community that a lot of gay people, their favorite film is Saw. So I was kind of like, watching this movie, thinking about that Leigh Whannell's character, he has gay vibes. Not necessarily gay vibes with the other main character, but just by himself. But that might just be me projecting my gender envy onto young Leigh Whannell, which is very weird and I don't like it. Persona. So this movie is about a young nurse who is put in charge of a retired actress who is seemingly in perfect health, but chooses not to speak. As they spend time together, they soon realize that one of them does not exist. This movie is like gay, and they spend majority of the movie living in like this summer beach house alone, and they're like hanging out together and bonding, and like they're always physically so close. Major gay vibes. Speaking of the gay vibes, spoiler alert, kind of like Fight Club. If you know, then you know. Which basically kind of spoils the whole movie, but I didn't like this movie, like, at all. But it did remind me how much I love black and white films. How the director frames people and shadows and contrast. I'm like, oh! The Mortuary collection This is an anthology film. A woman goes to an old mortuary and the undertaker tells her these really strange stories about the people who live in the town. Like all anthologies, you're always gonna get some shitty stories and some really good ones. First two stories are ass, they're totally forgettable. The last two stories are actually pretty fucking good. This movie was recommended by horror Twitter because of its monster prosthetics. And yeah, honestly, the quality and the designs of the monsters are on the same level as Guillermo del Toro. So that was the main reason I watched it, the horror prosthetics, and in that regard, I was very satisfied with the movie. But as a film overall, I think it's an okay movie. Yesterday my video was cut short because I actually had to go leave to watch a Warriors game. The Warriors played against the Toronto Raptors, which I gotta say, very slick aesthetic. The ASMR of like being in a sports arena, in a basketball arena, with like the defense, the sounds of squeaking basketball shoes on the court, and the sounds of the basketball bouncing. I absolutely hate that it's normalized in North America to constantly play music during sports games, most sports games. Like, it's just so obnoxious and annoying. Ugh. Anyways, let's talk about some movies. I watched Perfect Blue. It's a movie about a retired pop singer who loses her sense of reality when an obsessed fan starts stalking her and like the ghost of her past is haunting her. This is one of those movies that you definitely have to watch multiple times before you understand what's even going on. This was my first viewing and I will say that I was very unsatisfied by the time it was over. The moments that really worked for me were the scenes where the creators used the audience's perception of reality and assumptions against us, and I really think what they did there was very clever. Basically, what Perfect Blue does is that it misleads the audience to believe one thing when actually it's something completely opposite. But we believe this because we are assuming that this movie is following movie rules. Some of the themes that Perfect Blue explores is how people struggle to adapt to change, and also how people struggle to understand who they are and their identity. After looking into explanations from devoted fans of this film, I can see the themes that it was exploring and I appreciate them, but it's definitely something that I'm gonna have to rewatch and come to those conclusions myself. The next movie is Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying About the Bomb, or How I Learned Dr. Strangelove and How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. I don't think I'm ever going to like a Stanley Kubrick film, which is unfortunate. I think that his satire is just different from the satire that appeals to me. Dr. Strangelove is a social commentary satire about the Cold War and how nuclear war is useless. A US general, God fucking army labels, but some dude in the United States ordered for a nuclear bomb to be dropped in Russia. But he actually didn't have, like, the authority to do that, and so it's kind of like Russia and the United States being like, nuclear war, we don't actually want this, how are we gonna stop it? And it's basically poking fun at the people who are leading our countries and how war is kind of just like measuring dick sizes. A couple of the comedic scenes were funny, but a lot of them did not land for me. And as a black and white film, I don't think this movie was very pretty. Today is day 26 and I am recording from my new iPhone. I traded in my old one for an iPhone 13 and I didn't have to pay any extra for it, which is phenomenal. And oh my god, the quality, like, whoa, hello? This is amazing. Day 26, that means I have 4 more days left in this challenge. I'm so excited for it to be over. This was fun, this was great, but also I have been watching movies that I do not enjoy consecutively, and that just ruins my spirit in terms of watching movies. So I'm really excited to just not be in this challenge anymore, and that way I can at least space out the bad movies that I'm gonna watch. So the first movie I'm gonna talk about is one of my anticipated 2021 movies. Well, 2020, 2021 releases, and it did not go as well as I hoped. So the first film I want to talk about is Candyman. For decades, the housing projects of Chicago have been terrorized by like this monster with a hook for a hand. In the present day, this artist moves into this area which has now been gentrified and explores the history of the Candyman, not knowing that it's going to awaken him and release violence onto the community. The marketing for this movie was so fucking promising. I was so ready for the social commentary. And then you watch the movie and it's like, what happened? I am so immensely disappointed by this movie. The plot and the politics are so messy. It takes the themes of white supremacy, specifically gentrification and anti-blackness, from the first film and is even more forward and direct about discussing these themes, and yet it doesn't actually criticize anything. It is so on the nose about its criticisms of white people, but it doesn't actually have criticisms that have any weight or substance. And it feels to me that these one-liners are like standard basic criticisms that you would tell people who are first being introduced to this topic. Okay, if you have to explain your politics to the audience, then I know your target audience is white people. Candyman is the manifestation of vengeful spirits of black men and black boys who have been brutally murdered due to white supremacy. And so Candyman targets white people and murders them. So, keeping that in mind, tell me why Candyman murders black people. Like, what? Because then, what is the symbolism here? What is he representing if he is murdering black people? It just becomes this typical monster movie. There's no allegory, there's no symbolism, just a monster murdering people. Oh, very similar to The Invisible Man by Lee Vanell. They fucked that up too. Ooh, I gotta have a word with the people that making these horror movies that are allegories for social commentary. Goddamn. And this is more of a like silly criticism, but goddamn, they did not use Yahya Abdul to his full potential. The Candyman's aura, his presence, feeds into the white gaze, because like his victims are white, so he's intentionally seductive and alluring. So tell me why then Yahya Abdul was like not like that in this movie. He was so unattractive in this movie. I don't understand how they got that wrong. I was so excited when I heard about the casting because I was like, oh my god, he's so attractive and Candyman is attractive as fuck. This is great, perfect casting. I'm so ready for it. And then I just see him on screen as Candyman and his presence is just so flat. Oh my god. Like y'all, oh my god, you don't understand. In the 90s film, the first time the audience is introduced to the Candyman, like properly introduced to him, oh my god, I was blown away because his aura, his voice is so soothing. It's cinema. It's great. I highly encourage you to watch the original film and just experience him for the first time and just be like, wow, goddamn. As much as I want y'all to watch this and experience it for yourself, I know some of you aren't gonna watch this movie, which is okay. I will play a clip of his voice for you, but if you do want to experience the movie and him yourself, then like skip ahead or mute, and then you'll understand what I'm talking about. You will understand how high my expectations were for him, and then how it was just like crushed by his performance in this movie. As a monster fucker, as a certified monster fucker, Candyman's voice is like, whew, so high. And so disappointed by the 2021 film. Ugh.
You are not content with the stories, so I was obliged to come. Be my victim. I am the writing on the wall, the whisper in the classroom.
The Invisible Man. This is some fucking 1930s film, which I am okay with, but it just was not good. So the scientist takes refuge at like a nearby inn, hoping to reverse his experiment that turned him invisible. And literally all this movie is this fucking cishet white man being like, oh, now that I'm invisible, I don't have to be held accountable for my actions, so I'm just gonna be a little bitch and kill people and steal shit and just cause chaos. Again, as a monster fucker, high expectations for this man, so fucking disappointed. Also, this made me appreciate Leigh Whannell's film so much more because he took the Invisible Man and made him fucking interesting and also social commentary. Like, I know the third act of that film is fucking terrible. I don't even want to talk about it. But like the concept of it and the first 2/3 of that movie, really fucking good. Kingsman: The Golden Circle. I really don't want to talk about this movie, but I'm going to. So there's an attack on the Kingsman headquarters and a new villain arises. And Eggsy and Merlin find out there's like another agency, a secret agency called the Statesman, and they reach out to them to get their help to save the world. If I had the energy to do this, if I had the dedication to do this, I could write at least 2 full pages about why this movie is terrible. I'm just gonna tell y'all 10 bullet points. Number 1, spends half of the movie, if not majority of the movie, constantly reminding its audience that this is a sequel. 2, took out the heart and emotion of the first film, which is what made it work. Corny ass fight scenes. Oh my god, what happened? Killed off a woman who was a main character in the previous movie because she was supposed to be the romantic interest, but now she's not, so like we don't really have a use for her anymore. Therefore, we're just gonna kill her because we don't need her in this fucking movie. Unnecessarily expanded the universe because like, ooh, what if every country had a secret agency? Here's the Statesman. What the fuck? And then proceeded to throw away the Statesman and not use them for the plot at all. Why the fuck? What the fuck? They made up some scientific bullshit to justify bringing back a dead character and then didn't even do anything with that fucking character. Every man's motivation in this movie is some tired misogynistic trope. Really weird politics about drugs, like messy ass agenda that they're trying to push onto their audience. I don't even know what the fuck they were thinking. Last one is a spoiler and also content warning for sexual assault and rape. This was the most absurd thing I have ever seen in a fucking movie. Again, a lot of misogyny in this this film, even in the last one. But this is the most baffling thing I have ever seen. So there's a scene at a film festival where they need to put a tracker onto their target. But no. This isn't some boring, stereotypical tracker that you can put on their clothes or into their drink. No. This is one you have to put directly into their bloodstream. And their method of choice is to make the target believe they are sexually attracted to them and then finger them and insert the fucking tracker. You have to actually see Eggsy do it on screen. It is... Do you understand how bad that is? Oh my god! It's just so absurd. Moving on. This is the first and the only movie that I just did not finish because I was like, I'm not messing with this shit. Wake and Fright is this Australian 70s movie. John Grant is a teacher who is spending the night in a small town in the Australian outback, before he catches a plane to Sydney. But shit happens and he ends up spending several nights in the outback, and he starts to lose his sanity and engages in very destructive behaviors. I have never heard of this movie before. I was intrigued by the plot alone. I love movies that like put characters in very claustrophobic, overwhelming settings and situations where they kind of lose their sense of self and engage in destructive behaviors. I did not know that it was a controversial movie. A little over halfway through the film, I got sidetracked and I looked up some reviews of this movie, and I found out that this movie has real footage of animal abuse and animal death. So trigger warning and spoiler alert for what I'm going to say next. Without getting too into detail, there's a long sequence in the last act of this film that is real footage of a kangaroo hunt. They didn't kill kangaroos for the film, but rather the crew tagged along with some real kangaroo hunters and recorded it sort of like a documentary and used that footage for their movie. So they filmed this footage for their movie, but an additional motivation was like, maybe raw footage of these brutal killings will convince the Australian government to make kangaroo hunting illegal, and it did become illegal soon after. The kangaroo killings were brutal and torturous. The hunters did not go for the clean, merciful kill. They left out the most grotesque footage from the film, but like, I don't care how minimal the gore is. Knowing that that's real footage is just, I don't want to watch that. Matrix Revolutions. I watched this today and I wish I didn't. The human city of Zion is under massive invasion and they're fighting to end the war. The trilogy has been building up to this big final fight, and so obviously majority of the movie is fighting. I didn't like the direction the second movie was going. I already knew I wasn't gonna vibe with the third movie. I am sad that my emotions for this movie, the series, is not what I wanted it to be, but I really like the first one, and you know what? That's good enough for me. I have 4 days left, y'all, and then I'm free. It's so hard to balance watching TV shows and watching a movie every day. I'm excited to, just continue watching Downton Abbey, which is like an okay TV series, but goddamn, Dan Stevens is so cute in that series. I love that actor. And I also need to spend hours watching Apex streamers because yeah, my thirst for them is also at an all-time high right now. I accidentally skipped over a movie, so let me go back. They Look Like People is a horror movie where the main character believes that people are transforming into dangerous shapeshifters. He then flees to New York City to save his estranged childhood friend. A couple of things. This movie is about schizophrenia. What I appreciate about this film is that it portrays schizophrenia in a grounded way. It doesn't exploit the mental illness for unnecessary, unrealistic horror. Yes, there are things that are horrific that the main character believes is happening, but that is not the only thing in this movie. It has conversations about mental health, it has friends trying to help him, and it has individual struggles with schizophrenia. I don't have schizophrenia. My opinion is entirely based on the fact that all horror movies with schizophrenia are ableist. And this movie actively tries not to be that. And I'm actually quite satisfied with the direction they chose for the ending. That being said, I did not like this movie because I thought the pacing was really off. It focused too much on the friend that was helping him and the friend's relationship with other people, rather than the friend and his relationship with the main character. But overall, a very solid idea and a good ending that's not problematic. Creature from the Black Lagoon is a 1950s film. After finding remnants of a mysterious animal in Brazil, a group of scientists searched the area for more evidence of its existence. Out of all the old black and white films I watched for this challenge, I did not expect this one to be the good one. It's an okay story, the characters are really lacking in development, and the pacing gets wonky a lot, but the creature, the costumes, the contrast, the visuals, It's all so very good. I did not expect so much of this movie to be underwater, and it looks so much better than I would have expected from a 50s movie. I completely understand now why it's such a critically acclaimed movie and why it's such a big thing, and I'm so sorry for thinking that this was a shitty movie and that the creature was ugly. It is impossible to watch this movie and not think about The Shape of Water. Del Toro watched Creature from the Black Lagoon as a kid and was like, what if the love was requited? The Shape of Water is literally Creature from the Black Lagoon alternate universe fanfic. And like, I would love to compare the two and just think about how this is fanfiction, but I know it's not really relevant. Just know that I wish so much that I could be like Del Toro and make my monster dreams, and in his case, monster fanfics come true, come to life on screen with a really nice budget. Oh my god. The Fly, a 1980s film with Jeff Goldblum. After completing a teleportation device, a scientist uses himself as a test subject, accidentally fusing his body with a fly. The Fly is a beloved 80s horror film and is known as the film with Jeff Goldblum's best acting. In fact, fans and critics thought that Jeff Goldblum was going to be nominated for an Oscar, but we all know that the Academy hates horror movies, so he wasn't. But the synopsis of The Fly is just so generic that my brain could not connect those statements with this movie. But now, like, yeah, I get it. I get it. You'd assume that the main character is the scientist, but the movie is more centered around his partner, Veronica, and her emotions and her character arc. Because we're all very familiar with the story and we expect that being the subject of a failed science experiment is torturous and sad. What's more interesting is how the people in your life will react to it. You know what? This is very similar to the concept of An American Werewolf in London. As a comedy, it works, but it lacks well-developed sympathetic characters, and the romantic relationship is bullshit, so it lacks heart. All of which The Fly does really well. Oh, and the prosthetics, the horror is like much better in this movie. Actually, wait. Okay, the prosthetics for the friend in American Werewolf in London is really good. Like, okay, I'm not gonna get into details about the prosthetics, but anyways, The Fly is gross. Like, it's nasty. Everyone kept saying it was gross, and I didn't believe them, and then I watched this movie, and I was like, this is disgusting. Not saying that it has excessive gore. The gore is relevant and intentional and justified. It's just really nasty. The Fly is so tragic. It's so sad. I love it. Angst, unhappy ending, monster fucking, 3 of my favorite things. Today is November 30. I am officially done with this film challenge. I am free. I can watch as much Downton Abbey and Apex Legends as I want. Last night, I watched Professor Marston and the Wonder Woman. This is a very queer movie about 2 psychologists who begin a polyamorous relationship with another woman. This film is for such a small target audience. I'm like, okay, this is a really good movie. I don't know if I would recommend it to a lot of people. In my half-assed internet research, a lot of the major plot points in this movie are fictional or like assumed. But what is true is they did invent an early prototype of the lie detector. They were a polycule, they raised a family together, the 2 women were bisexual, and one of the women is the direct inspiration for Wonder Woman. It's a solid movie, and I'm like, still trying to reel in all my emotions. The queerness is kind of like blocking my ability to function and think without any biases. I love the development and the depth of all 3 characters and how we as the audience can really see and understand psychology and how their brain works and their morals about women's rights and how all of that led to the creation of Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman is inherently queer. There's nothing you can do about that. She's canonically bisexual too, so like, I love that they used comics as a gateway to influence the minds of people. Like, that is so like, oh, if I had the ability, the creativity, the intelligence to do something like that, I would, I love media that is intentionally put out there to influence people, make them question things subconsciously, consciously. It's so cool when people do that. For the last day of the film challenge, which is today, I watched 3 short films on YouTube. The first is Firebase, which is set during the Vietnam War. And it follows an American soldier who is trying to understand how these impossible science fiction shit is happening. There is a decent concept here, but the direction they chose, I don't think it works. I hate war movies, especially when they're in the perspective of American soldiers and like the timeline of events. And choosing a white American soldier as the main point of view for the story ruins the concept. We are tired of historical war movies about white soldiers. No more white American soldiers in historical war movies. We are so tired of it, dude. Literally, do something else. But the production's really good. That's like the one good thing about it. I really love the mixture of CGI and practical effects. I like the monster in this. A lot of it is simple, but it looks really cool. It's invisible at times, and each time it appears, it changes its form. And yeah, it looks cool. Zygo is the next short film, and it is by the same studio. The 2 remaining crew members of a mining operation in the Arctic fight to survive against an alien creature. This is very obviously inspired by the movie Alien. Honestly, that was like the genre setter anyway, so any movie that has the same sort of setup is literally like Alien. It takes place in a very isolated, claustrophobic space. It's a very classic monster survival horror story. You already know what to expect from it. It doesn't bring anything new to the table. Nothing stands out except for maybe the monster design. And even then, I'm not too impressed by it, mainly because I don't think they successfully present the creature to the audience. They didn't do enough to make me believe that this creature is something to fear and see as a threat, which is essential for the genre of horror. The last film is a 10-minute film called The Backwater Gospel. Backwater is a small town in the West that is doomed by frequent visits by the Undertaker, who is capital D Death, and the citizens blame the town outcast. The Backwater Gospel has really dark themes about fear, the fear of death, and religious herd mentality. And when you combine all of these elements, devout Christian leaders can manipulate and weaponize this to their own benefit. Sorry to be a stingy asshole, but I didn't like this art style, and honestly that is preventing me from enjoying this short film more. It really fits the atmosphere, the environment, and what's happening. Like, it's rustic and grimy and gritty. It fits. I know it does. But like, the wooden and like comic booky aesthetic just doesn't work with me. I finished. I'm done talking for this video. I have finished this challenge. 30 fucking days of watching movies. Thank you for watching this video. I appreciate you so much. Tell me in the comments below if you have any movie recommendations or if I convinced you to watch any of these movies. If you like the content, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out as a small artist. I have so many videos prepped for the next 2 months. I'm so excited to get working on them. But until then, I hope you all have a good day. Make sure you stretch your body and drink some water. And yeah, just enjoy the rest of your day, y'all. Thank you again for watching this video, and I'll see y'all later.